speaking of primaries, we are fresh off the Democratic primary in Texas, where James Talarico, the state house rep from Austin, had won the Democratic nomination to represent Texas in the United States Senate. Now, we know the general election between Democrat and Republican will be in November, but until then, we have a lot of work to do. This was a very competitive and contentious primary between congressional rep Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico. So even how the electorate, really decided, the voters really came down to building a broad coalition. Now, we know James Talarico had done a really good job, speaking to voters on his message of reforming the systems, taking on the billionaire class, and how our leaders are not meeting their needs. And this resonated a lot with white voters, Latino voters, and young voters, 3 core demographics that really make up the Democratic Party. Now, Jasmine Crockett, we know her strategy was energizing the base of the Democratic Party. This included, white liberals. This included the black majority, which, again, is a huge backbone of the Democratic Party, where black women reliably vote and are most loyal to the party. And because of that, right, Jasmine Crockett almost won that Democratic primary in Texas with just the black vote. It was about 93% of the black vote that went straight to Jasmine Crockett. So that is phenomenal. However, because she wasn't able to cut into the margins in key urban areas like Houston or Austin, those are the areas that if she were able to have a stronger lead, then she actually could have won. But again, this isn't necessarily just about a difference in race. If you look at how the campaigns were run, James Talarico started in September, Jasmine Crockett started in December. James Talarico raised over $20 million. Jasmine Crockett raised over $5 million. There really wasn't enough of, not only on-the-ground organizing, but also online digital organizing. James Talarico was successful at both, showing up on podcasts and TV shows such as Joe Rogan's podcast and The View. Whereas Jasmine Crockett, her theory was using digital influencers, much like Mayor Mamdani did, and trying to be present and have them talk about her campaign everywhere, shape, or form. Now, unfortunately, the digital-only strategy did not work as well without the hybrid of having boots on the ground. Now, to be fair, James Talarico, State House rep in Texas, didn't have to go to Washington, D.C. as often as Jasmine did because she's a congressional rep, where he is not. And even though Jasmine Crockett was more qualified, right, having more experience at the federal level, James Talarico was a better campaigner, but also made moves to turn out the vote. So, at the end of the day, James Talarico will need to win over Jasmine's base. And because the Democratic Party is a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-class party, he will have to shift his messaging. Now, he'll have to win over voters on 2 fronts. First, because it's a general election, this means he'll have to win over voters from the left, right? The progressives that really want him to go further on his stance against Israel and AIPAC, who want him to go further on AI regulation, want him to go further on on immigration, such as saying the words abolish ICE. Now, these are all, really, I don't want to say, these are leftist positions that really work well in more traditionally blue bastions like California or New York, especially in New York City and especially in Los Angeles. However, the state of Texas, not the same electorate. They operate from a very different place. So I would caution leftists demanding that James Talarico, shift in their direction. Because here's the thing. As much as it would be great to see him go, further against AIPAC, against AI, and on immigration, this will not be enough to necessarily, or this could actually deter voters that he is also trying to build into his camp. Now, there is a way to communicate this, right? And that will be key. And then one last point, right? Let's remember that James Talarico didn't win with the Democratic base. He won bringing independents and some disaffected Republicans into his Democratic primary. Because in Texas, the primaries aren't closed. So if you're an independent who doesn't like, or an independent who wants to make their voice heard, they vote in that primary. So now independents and Republicans will have a chance in the general election in Texas to vote for either James Talarico or the Republican candidate. So, with that said, the other shift that James Talarico will have to fight against is winning over voters disaffected from, the contentious primary between him and Jasmine Crockett. Now, the Crockett voters, they were very much supportive of a fighter, someone who's going to really take on Trump, and someone who is going to, speak their language. And what I mean by that is really giving that energy, that fire, and that commitment to policies that really put the people first. Now, it's not like James doesn't have that intention, but if you watch him speak, he's very calm, he's very steady, and, some could say he's still like toast. I could see that argument. I get it. There's a lack of energy that, or even excitement that he exudes when he speaks. But like a seminary, which is his background, he is a steady leader. He is calm and collected and focused. Now, another thing too, James Talarico went to Harvard to study educational policy. That gives me a lot of hope. The fact that he, intelligent to go to Harvard, but B, to study educational policy, not financial banking or something, or being a lawyer. He wanted to study how to improve education in people's lives. So because of that, I trust that he will use this experience and learn how to, connect and build bridges with voters, just like Mayor Mamdani did. When Zohran Mamdani was running in the general election to become New York City's next mayor, he did a great job winning over black voters. Now, he didn't win the entire vote because, get this, the black vote here in New York City was very split. Moderate black voters were generally over the age of 50, while progressive black voters were generally under the age of 50. And because of that differentiation between age, it also shaped their views on the policies. So, of course, the more moderate black voters, they voted for Cuomo. The progressive young black voters, they voted for Mamdani. The same thing will happen in Texas. We know that right now it's not necessarily, it's not like the moderate black voters will vote for the Republican, but they will be more resistant to openly embrace James Talarico. Again, whether it's through his messaging or through his policies, he's going to have to work on those inroads. So, this would actually be a great time for James Talarico to get on the phone with Zohran Mamdani and be like, "Hey man, what can I do?" Well, let's look at what Zohran did. There are actually two great things that Zohran did. Number one, he directly met them where they're at in their spaces. Zohran went to black churches in Harlem, even on stage with Reverend Al Sharpton, to really communicate that he is looking for their vote to earn it, but also to support them, especially as working class New Yorkers. Zohran did an excellent job with that, meeting them where they're at, in churches, in black spaces, right? So he was able to pull over some people into his camp. Now, he also did that with housing policy. Now, we know that Zohran did come under fire because after studying not only the neighborhoods where or property taxes for white homeowners were lower than property taxes for black homeowners. And most black homeowners are going to be older and moderate. So even having the policy to say, hey, I want to make sure property taxes are lower for y'all because y'all have been disenfranchised by our racist redlining systems all throughout the past 20th century. So because of that, I give Zohran a lot of credit for trying to meet them where they're at in black spaces, but also have policy to follow that up. Now, granted, of course, there's more that he's done, but that's just two quick ones right there. But also, cleverly enough, what I really appreciate about Zohran's campaign is that because he was able to build up this enthusiasm and excitement with young voters, young black voters, he didn't have to talk to them directly, but it was young black voters who then pulled and convinced their mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and grandparents to go to the polls and support Mamdani. Can you believe that? So it was the young ones, young voters, who convinced older voters to support Mamdani and say, hey, you got to vote for this guy. He's great. Listen to me. And, the moms and dads and the moms and pops, they're all like, sure, I really don't know much, but if you say he's good, he's got my vote. So think about that. It's indirectly organizing with the electorate by generating that enthusiasm, energizing the base, And that will resonate, kind of creating like a ripple effect throughout the electorate. So if James Talarico wants to win over the black vote, he will have to meet them where they're at in spaces where they feel safe and secure. He will then have to also, follow up with policy that speaks directly to their needs. And then lastly, what would be great is if he really energized not only his speeches on the campaign trail, but do it in a way that gets young voters excited to then tell people in their lives to organize with and then pull them to the polls. Now, at the end of the day, regardless how you feel about Jasmine Crockett or James Talarico, what I would love to see from his campaign is to stay focused on the goal. And the goal should be to turn Texas blue. If you can turn Texas blue, right? Bright blue, that would send shockwaves around not only the Republican Party, not only the Democratic Party, but around the world. And I say that because to hear that a ruby red state, traditionally conservative state like Texas, which has been skewing purple in the past 10 years, has then gone blue, that will just open up so much voter enthusiasm for Democratic-leaning voters all around the country, and that will give Democrats the headwinds they need to take on Trump and the Republicans in 2028. Breaking news, we have finally amassed over 100 subscribers on YouTube for Not Suitable for Democracy. Thank you all so much for tuning in, subscribing, and sharing your feedback. It has been so helpful to make this a stronger show. So, like I say every time, if you like what you hear and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, then give us a like and a comment, and I'll do my best to respond.